This video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning community for creative and curious people. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having a wonderful day today. So I am so excited to be jumping into my first fall sewing project this year, and I am so happy with how this one turned out. I can't wait to share it with you guys today. I think you're going to really like it as well. So let me just go ahead and show you what I'll be making. Today I'm going to be making this kind of cottage inspired dress, and I just absolutely love this fabric and design. I think it turned out so beautifully. So I'm going to be working with a pattern today, and the pattern is from a pattern company called Stitch Witch Patterns, and this is their basque dress pattern. Now this pattern has a few different options. You can make it as a blouse or a dress, and the dress also has a few different options. So I opted for the longer sleeves and the gathered skirt. It has this beautiful pointed waist detail, a kind of like scoop style neck, and then a cute little tie in the back. And I just think it's the perfect little like cottagecore dress, so I'm so excited about it. So without further ado, let me go ahead and jump in and show you how I made it. The fabric that I chose for this project is this beautiful floral linen fabric from Merely Susan. It's 100% linen, and I absolutely love the print on this. The background is cream, and then it has this beautiful pink and green floral pattern. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to cut out all of my pattern pieces. This pattern is a digital pattern, so I downloaded and printed the entire thing, and then I just pinned down all of my pattern pieces and cut them out. I chose the version of this dress that has longer sleeves and a gathered skirt, so let's take a quick look at all of the pattern pieces. First, there's the bodice front and back pieces, as well as the sleeves, and this is the longer length like I said before. And then there are facing pieces for the neckline front and back, as well as waist ties, and then the skirt front and back pieces. And with everything cut out, I was ready to get started with the sewing process. So I'm going to start today by constructing the bodice. And the first step to making this bodice is to pin and sew all of the darts. So to sew my darts, I usually mark the points of the darts using pins, and I cut notches to mark the bottom of the darts during the cutting out process. So that's already marked for me. And then I'll just transfer over those markings for the points of the darts using pins like you see me doing here. Then all I have to do is bring together the notches from the bottom of the darts and match everything up so that it creates that nice triangle fold in the fabric. Then I'll just pin along the stitching line and sew my darts in place using a straight stitch. Whenever I sew darts in place, I always start by back stitching at the bottom of the dart and then sew towards the edge, sewing directly off of the fabric without back stitching. Then I'll cut a long thread so that I can knot the threads together, and this will prevent any puckering on the dart once I've pressed it. And with the darts sewn in place, I'm going to quickly assemble the neckline facing. So to do this, I'm going to take the back pieces for the facing and pin them to the front piece with the right sides together. I'll pin these together along the shoulder edge and sew these seams in place with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to use my serger to finish the edge of these seams as well as the entire outer edge of the facing to prevent any fraying on the inside of the dress. Going back to the bodice now, I'm going to quickly press all of my darts nice and flat, and then I'm ready to sew the bodice shoulder seams. To sew the shoulder seams, I'm going to place the back pieces of the bodice against the front piece with the right sides together along the shoulder line and pin these in place, and then stitch these seams using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and use my serger to finish off the edge. This pattern did recommend stay stitching along the neckline and armhole edges, so I'm doing that really quickly here, just using a long stitch length and running stitching all the way around those edges, being careful not to stretch the fabric. So with the shoulder seams sewn, I'm ready to move on to attaching the neckline facing to the neck edge. So to do this, I'm going to pin it in place with the right sides together all around the neck edge, being careful to leave a few inches open at either end. This is a technique described in the pattern guide that I think is really nice for creating a clean edge on the zipper, and you'll see that later. So I'm going to sew all the way around the neckline, just leaving open those few inches at the edge as you see here. I'm going to trim away any excess seam allowance along this seam and then quickly understitch the neck edge to keep everything in place. I really love the way the understitching looks on this facing. I think it's probably one of the cleanest and neatest facings that I've done, so I was really happy with how it looked in the end. So moving on next to the waist ties. To make these, I'm going to fold each of these pieces in half along that long edge and pin all the way across this edge. Then I'm going to sew this into a tube and also sew across one of the short edges using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm going to trim away any excess seam allowance from these edges, and then I can turn these to the right side. Now, since I did sew closed one of those short edges, I like to use something like a knitting needle or a chopstick or pencil, whatever you have around, just to help turn that towards the right side, and then I pressed these ties nice and flat. The next step is both to attach the waist ties and sew the side seams, and I'm going to do this at the same time. First, I'm going to pin the waist ties to the front of the dress with the right sides together and matching that raw edge to the side of the dress. I'm pinning these together 5/8 of an inch from the lower edge of the bodice. Next, I'm just going to fold the back of the dress over the front and then match up the side seams, encasing that waist tie in the side seam. Then I'll just make sure that everything is pinned together securely and sew these seams using a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm also going to use my serger to finish the edge here. So now it's time to assemble the sleeves, and the first step to making these sleeves is to run 2 rows of gathering stitches along the top edge between the notches that are marked on the pattern. While I'm at it, I'm also going to go ahead and sew the side seam on the sleeve by matching the sleeve edge together with the right sides together and sewing this down with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Next, I'm going to hem the sleeves by folding up that lower edge 1/4 of an inch and then a 1/2 of an inch to create a double hem. I'll just top stitch all the way around this lower edge. These sleeves do have an elasticated edge, so I'm going to go ahead and mark the placement for the elastic while I'm at the ironing board. So to do this, I'm just measuring up 4 inches from the hem of the sleeves and marking this with pins to give me a guide as I sew on my elastic. I've cut a piece of elastic that fits comfortably around my arm, and to sew this in place, I'm going to stretch it across the back of the fabric and top stitch it in place. This will allow the fabric to gather up as you stretch the elastic across, as you can see I'm doing here. So I started by stitching the hem in place, and then I went ahead and sewed my elastic in place. Now ordinarily I would recommend sewing on the back of the fabric so that you can see the elastic, but I actually had the wrong color of thread in my bobbin and it didn't quite match the top of my fabric. So I just decided to kind of feel the elastic and make sure that it was in place that way, but it definitely would have been easier on the other side. So now the sleeves have started to take shape and they're looking so cute. I'm going to quickly pull the gathering threads together so that this is ready to insert into the armhole. So to sew the sleeve into the armhole, I'm going to match up the side seams of both the bodice and the sleeve and pin this in place with the right sides together. I like to match the seams together here as well as the center of the sleeve to the shoulder seam, and this will allow me to distribute my gathers really evenly as I pin this in place. And once the sleeve is pinned in place, I'm just going to sew around this entire circle and use a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance here, and also use my serger to create a clean edge. And with the bodice done, it's time for a quick coffee break and to tell you a little bit about the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. I love having Skillshare classes on in the background while I work on my projects, and also to take little breaks while I'm working on sewing. So I'm so excited to be partnering with them again on another video today. In case you're not familiar, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators, and they have topics ranging from graphic design to photography, productivity, embroidery, and so much more. It's perfect for learning brand new skills or brushing up on old ones. I've been enjoying watching this embroidery class called Stitching Woodland Creatures 101. It has so much great information about creating texture in embroidery, and the little creatures are just adorable. Skillshare members get access to thousands of amazing video classes along with hands-on projects like you can see here from the embroidery class, and feedback from the community of millions. And most classes are under 60 minutes, so there is definitely something to fit with everyone's schedule. One thing that I love about Skillshare is that it is specifically curated for learning, meaning that there are no ads, so while I leave these videos on in the background while I'm working on a project, I don't have to worry about coming over to my computer and skipping an ad. And Skillshare once again has an amazing special offer for you guys. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so that you can start exploring your creativity today. Thank you again so much to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get back to making the skirt. So this skirt is really simple to put together, and for starters, I'm just going to stitch up the side seams. So I'm just placing the back pieces against the front piece with the right sides together along the side seams, and then I'll sew these down with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and use the serger to finish the edge. And once those seams are sewn, I'm just going to quickly press both of those seams towards the back of the dress. Now, since this dress has a pointed waistline, the skirt is actually gathered in 2 separate sections, so I'm going to sew 2 rows of gathering stitches on either side of the middle of the skirt. Next, I'm going to pull up the gathering threads and adjust the gathers to fit to the bodice. So now I'm ready to attach the skirt to the bodice. So to do this, I'm going to pin the skirt to the bodice with the right sides of the fabric together. And I'm going to start here at the center point of the bodice and skirt just to make sure that this is really clean. And per the pattern instructions, I'm going to clip into the fabric on the skirt just to make sure that I don't get any puckering here, and this will fit really nicely together. Then I'm going to pin the skirt in place across the entire edge of the bodice, making sure to adjust the gathers evenly. Now I'll sew all of this in place with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and use the serger to finish the edge. While I'm at the serger, I'm also going to go ahead and run a row of serging across the entire back edge of the dress on both sides so that this is a clean edge when I go to sew the back seam. Now it's time to add the zipper. So I'm using an invisible zipper today, and I'm going to align the zipper tape with the edge of the dress on one side of the dress and pin this in place and sew the first half of the zipper down. I'll repeat the same thing on the opposite side, making sure that the zipper doesn't get twisted. Now remember those little edges of the facings that we left earlier. We're going to go ahead and deal with these now by pinning this along the neckline with the right sides together and also around that edge of the zipper. So when I sew this in place and turn it towards the right side, it will create a really clean edge at the top of the dress and the zipper edge. The next step is to sew the back seam, so I'm going to go ahead and match up the back edges of the dress beneath the zipper and pin this in place. Then I'll sew this together with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and since I already used the serger across the back of the dress, there's no need to finish this seam now. And then finally, it's time to hem this dress. So I'm doing the same hem here that I did on the sleeves, folding this up 1/4 of an inch and then again 1/2 of an inch. And then I'll just top stitch this in place on the sewing machine. And with the hem stitched in place, this dress was done. And here is a look at the finished dress. I absolutely love this style. I think it's so cute and unique and not like anything else that I have in my wardrobe. I love how floaty this linen fabric is, and all the different details in the pattern make it such a special piece. I love how fitted the bodice is, and it makes it almost like a historical inspired piece of clothing. And the little tie in the back is just adorable as well. I am so happy with how this project turned out. I really enjoyed using this pattern. It was really easy to follow, and I also love all of the unique design details that were included. So be sure to check out Stitch Witch Patterns if you're interested. They have some beautiful, unique designs, so I will have their shop linked down below. I'm already thinking about how I can style this dress going into the fall season, because right now it is the right weather to wear something like a floaty dress like this, but I think this would also be so cute styled with a knitted cardigan and boots. So I'm excited to style it in the upcoming days. Thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out here on my channel today. If you're new around here and want to keep up with my future sewing projects, I would really appreciate it if you'd go ahead and subscribe by clicking the red button down below. That really helps to support my channel, and I really appreciate each one of you that's taken the time to subscribe and watch my videos. Thank you again so much to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check them out at the link down in the description box once again if you're interested. I think you guys will love them as much as I do. If you'd like to keep up with me outside of YouTube, TikTok and Instagram will be linked down below as usual. Thank you guys again so much for watching and spending your time here on my channel today. I am going to get started on my next sewing project, and I will see you in a video soon. Bye!